Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all well. If you haven't met me before, I'm Matt, and we are going to continue our Kids Church series on the book of Genesis from God's Word. So today we're looking at Genesis chapter 25, verses 19 to 28. So if you'd like to open that up and read that with me, that would be awesome. I'll give you a few seconds to open up to that chapter. Okay, so this is from God's Word in the Bible, Genesis 25, starting at verse 19. This is the account of Abraham's son Isaac. Abraham became the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel the Aramean from Padan Aram, and sister of Laban the Aramean. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. The babies jostled each within her. And she said, "Why is this happening to me?" She went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment, so they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was a quiet man staying among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, that is, wild animals, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So, after reading that, I'm wondering if you guys know anyone who is a twin. Maybe you've got friends at school, friends at a sporting club who may be twins. Maybe there are twins in your family. Maybe you're a twin. Maybe they look exactly the same, and it's hard to tell the difference and tell them apart. Or maybe they look completely different. They don't look the same at all. They just look like two very different people, but they were born on the same day at the very same time, pretty much. So we've been looking at Genesis, and Isaac grows up into a man and marries Rebekah, as we saw briefly last week. She was what's called barren, which means no matter how hard she tried to have a child, she could not have one. And that must have been a really difficult thing for Isaac, because he would have heard about all the promises that God had made to Abraham, his father, saying that from his family line, God will keep many of his promises, and from Abraham's children, there will be children for his children as well. So many children that came from their family, it would grow into a nation. So we'd be wondering again, like we did a couple of weeks ago, whether God would keep his promises to Isaac and to Abraham, because it was impossible for Rebekah to have a child. But Isaac went to God and told him about his frustration and asked God for a child, that he would bless Rebekah with a child of her own so that they could have a family. Well, God answered Isaac's prayer, and Rebekah fell pregnant. Now, babies move around in mothers' stomachs as they grow, and Rebekah felt as the children grew in her stomach that she could feel them moving, and she could feel them, as God's word says, that she could feel them struggling and fighting inside her womb. It would have hurt a lot. It would have been very, very painful. So she goes to God and she asks God, "Why is this happening to me?" God told her that she would be having twins, not just one child, but two. They would grow, and that would allow the family to grow even larger as well. But God said, although you'll have twins, and although you'll have more than one child at this time, these two children would always be fighting, trying to be better than the other. And it would go on through their families as well. As their families grew larger and became their own separate little nations, they would always be fighting and always trying to be better than the other. But God said that the younger one, the least expected, would always be the one that was the strongest, and the older one would always be the one that would serve the younger brother or the younger people. So time came for the children to be born, and Esau came out red and hairy. That was the first son. The eldest son came out red and hairy, as God's word says. And Jacob came out clinging his older brother's foot, not letting go of his ankle. So they grow up, and Jacob, the youngest brother, was Rebekah's favourite, and Esau, the older brother, was Isaac's favourite. So what do we take from this story that we've learnt this week? Well, Abraham's family has grown, and God has blessed Isaac with two children, Esau and Jacob. They've got a family going, but there's not a nation yet. And although there was going to be conflict between Esau and Jacob, God knew about it. God wasn't going to let the conflict between Jacob and Esau and their families and later their nations to get in the way of him keeping his promises. God would work through people we wouldn't really think would have been as important, just like the younger brother over the older brother, to bring about the fulfillment of his greatest promise. God would use the younger and stronger brother to send his son into the world to save them from their biggest problem, which is sin. And that is so much later in the story, but how good is that? So guys, how about you sit with your parents now and all your friends or your brothers and sisters and give thanks that God keeps his promises to his people and to the people that trust in him. How about you do that? Give thanks that God fulfilled his promises to Abraham and to Isaac, giving them children, but most of all, giving thanks that, through their families and through the difficult times when it seemed it wasn't going to happen, that God kept his promises and sent us Jesus. So how about you do that and have a good week and take care. See you later, guys. I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.